with Sheriff Richard-Mack. We're going to get into Fast and Furious. New information on that. Government caught red-handed shipping the guns of Mexico and Miami. I mean, they're controlling the gangs that they want to knock out the other drug gangs. We're going to get in to the militarization of police and then your phone calls. And I'm feeling a little bit of overdrive come on today, but I've got to not do overdrive today because we're doing the special TV report. You know, I should have thought about having you here tonight for the report. But who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll find out after the show. But Sheriff Richard-Mack's our guest. This is a short segment, long segment coming up. Let's get into militarization of police. Every week now, articles come in, usually from the military base itself. And Homestead Air Force Base in Florida is announcing they're now patrolling the town, and they're making arrests at the Circle K and other events. And they could argue, well, it's a citizen's arrest, same power we have, but it's active duty military doing this. Sheriff Mack, what's that really about?
Well, it's happening all across the country. I don't care where you go, and you can see it on YouTube almost every day where another cop is out of control. What these cops are being trained to do, in fact, there was one on YouTube I just saw, somebody just sent to me and asked me to look at it and give them some advice. The guy just is seeing some cops go after a lady on a traffic stop, and it looked like they were way out of line, you know, handcuffing her and all this stuff. And he calls them from his garage, from on his property. He yells out at the cop, "You're a Nazi."
And they come and arrest him in his garage.
They come and arrest him on his property and arrest him. Yeah, you've seen it. And I am appalled at stuff like this.
Well, what about when they find a homeless guy who doesn't even resist? They beat him for 5 minutes and he dies.
Right.
And the police say, that's a good killing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not about showing off that you're macho and can kill, you know, a schizophrenic homeless person.
Right. And then we have the Jose Guerrero shooting in Tucson, which I, with Oath Keepers, went down to that memorial service. And it's just over and over and over. And what has happened is we have a SWAT team mentality. And in the book I'm writing right now, I have the chapter dedicated to this, and it says, "Don't swat me, bro." Remember the guy that was yelling, "Don't tase me, bro"? At some, I can't remember University of Florida.
No, John Kerry's like, let him finish his question. And the cops go, no. The guy's going, I'm not resisting. And they just shock him.
Right. Exactly. That guy. I've got his name and everything. It's in my book. And it's just.
It reminds me of deer hunters that get buck fever when a big buck finally comes out. Or they shoot a cow because they want to kill something.
It does.
And it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and taser you because I want, you know.
Well, that shooting incident in Tucson of Jose Guerrero shows an officer. If you look at the tape, the SWAT team's own tape, there's 3 officers at the threshold, at the door. And they push in the door and immediately they start shooting. You know, nothing about drop the gun or put it down. We're the cops. Put it down. You got it. You know, we got you. Then there's an officer of the SWAT team about 10 feet behind him. And as soon as the shooting starts, he rushes to the door, has his gun drawn, puts it over the shoulder of another officer, and is now having the muzzle blast. And he starts firing, empties his gun, and fires right next to one of the other officers' face, where the muzzle blast is in this guy's face.
And he was wanting to get some.
Yeah, he wanted to be part. He didn't want to be left out of the dance. And that's exactly
he wanted another kill.
And this is the mentality that I worry about.
Well, that's why you don't want militarized police, because military kills people and breaks things.
Exactly. And that's what we've done with the SWAT teams all across this country. We have trained these guys that you go home is the most important thing at night. And instead of, you know what? It may be the worst thing we could do is shooting an innocent person.
Because that's going to turn the population against them. We're already seeing it starting where citizens are starting to shoot first, ask questions later. They're actually escalating it into a war.
Right, because of the mentality and what the cops are doing. First of all, there should have never been a SWAT team at the Jose Guerrero home. If you wanted to serve a warrant on this guy, stop him on the way home, have him stay there, inform him that he's not allowed to use his phone, take his cell phone away from him, inform him there's going to be a search warrant served at his house, ask him if there's anything that they need to be aware of in that home, and say, is your wife armed? Is she blah, blah, blah?
Well, I mean, you're obviously a long-time law enforcement sheriff, peace officer.
20 years.
So you know all this, but just studying criminology, in the old days, you always stopped somebody when they were leaving home because that was the safe way.
Safe way.
You don't go do an armed assault on a house.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, why don't they do the old-fashioned thing?
Because these guys are trained to be Mr. Macho, militarization, and they're not trained in this stuff. They're not trained to proceed in logical means. And it really has me completely baffled why the leadership, the sheriffs, and that's what I'm doing nationwide. I'm reaching out to sheriffs, and I believe that we can change this and stop it. But if we do, it's going to be sheriff by sheriff.
All right, let's continue with that and get into Fast and Furious. But just the common sense of that, if you really think somebody's doing something illegal in a house, you know when they're going to work.
Right.
You just park down the street and you follow them you pull them over, nothing happens.
Simple.
Instead of charging a house.
Or take him down at work.
Well, that's like David Koresh, who went into town every day and had a business.
No,
they wanted the confrontation.
Yes, exactly.
They wanted the big macho shootout, and they got it. And talking to Sheriff Mack, you wanted to finish up with something about Waco. I mentioned that it was done as a publicity stunt, and then you talked about your lawyer, from your Supreme Court case, actually confirmed that that is what that was about.
It was a staged event, no question about it. The BATF was being considered to be scaled down or completely dissolved and abolished, and have the FBI take over gun enforcement. And so the BATF knew that they had to stage an event that would prompt Congress to not only not get rid of them, but to make them bigger. And actually, that's what happened. The BATF actually got an increase of money and manpower after the Waco incident.
They have the second largest building in D.C. after the Pentagon.
BATF does?
They have a gigantic office building, yeah.
I didn't know that.
They just finished it like 5 years ago.
I would have guessed the Department of Education, but that's another one that needs to go.
Well, it's in a bunch of buildings, yeah. They have one giant complex.
Oh, okay. See, well, this is just another example of out-of-control, stupid government that we have today. And the essence of tyranny is the enforcement of stupid laws, and that's what we have going on in our police departments and federal government all across the country.
I would just add the essence is when they write laws for law-abiding citizens. Look at this article. ATF manager says he shared Fast and Furious info with White House. We posted that C-SPAN video at Infowars.com yesterday, but you talked to Larry Pratt. He's been at the hearings and give us the bad news and the good news. I mean, it's bad news the White House is this criminal, but the good news is if we keep forcing this issue, this could bring them down like Nixon. Tell us what's happening.
Well, quite frankly, this is a bigger scandal than Watergate was, and no question about it. And that's also in my book. And the title of my book is The Magic of Gun Control. And we're seeing the magic all the time, which there isn't any. It's all an illusion. And right now we have Fast and Furious, which has literally been the biggest scandal since the assassination of JFK. And the reason why it has not gotten the play that Watergate got is plain and simply mainstream media. Now, we have reporter Atkinson. I think her name is Cheryl Atkinson. She actually was one of the first to expose this. She works for CBS News.
No, strangely enough, CBS broke it.
Yeah.
And then the Justice Department said...
And then they back off.
Well, good. ATF did their right job and said, look, Border Patrol have been killed. They went public with this.
Yeah.
And then they said, you're liars. And it turns out the Attorney General has perjured himself.
Yes. And not only that, but they have refused congressional subpoenas, which is against the law. That's a violation of the law. You cannot refuse that. Senator Grassley is so frustrated at the response from the White House. And then when they finally get documents that they've been asking for weeks, they're all blacked out. And so, then they claim national security. National security about gun running into Mexico? What is national security? We're not at war with Mexico. This isn't any secret war or anything we're going at. What is national security? Just show the documents. If you need to take an informant's name out, fine, black that out. But they're 90% blacked out, and so they're nothing. And they're completely
And
useless.
Congress, they're the lawgivers. They represent the people. The executive, just like they launched the Libya war without their approval, is just doing whatever it wants. And now it turns out that the head special agent ATF in charge of Phoenix, who and I know it's an oxymoron to say good ATF, but he said, look, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is criminal. And it turns out he's told the truth, and he testified that the White House did know. Well, of course, now we know the FBI and DEA were involved.
Yes, and Agent Dodson from the Phoenix office was actually the first one to break this whole thing. He exposed it to Atkinson. And so this is a gigantic story, but you need to understand this is our own federal government running guns into Mexico, and the reason they said they were doing it is so they could trace the guns into the cartels. The only way you can trace a gun into a cartel is if it has a GPS unit. There was only 2 guns with GPS units, so they couldn't trace them anyway. So they had to know that they were going to be used in gun violence. And then Agent Brian Terry, working for the Border Patrol, is shot and killed. His family starts asking for answers, and then Dodson starts telling the truth from the BATF office in Phoenix, exposing his own department, his own office, for the corruption of running these guns down to Mexico. And you need to know, every one of your listeners, you need to absolutely know what this was. Have you ever heard Barack Obama get up and say, even since the Gifford shooting in Tucson, where Judge Roll was killed, even since then, you have not heard, even at the memorial service, you have not heard Barack Obama say, we've got to have more gun control. You know he's a gun control fanatic. Everybody he has, Eric Holder, everybody in his cabinet are anti-Second Amendment. They want to do this. This was their way of promoting and making sure gun control would become a second.
And by the way, there's total proof. It turns out a year ago, and I was already talking about this at the time, they put out press releases. Holder came to Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, and gave speeches saying the crime in Mexico is because of U.S. guns.
Right.
They know they're shipping them in. And that's how they, but now it came out in the Miami papers and others that they're shipping them into Miami to go to Honduras.
Right.
And so this is a lot bigger.
It's a lot bigger, and it's, again, a lot worse than Watergate. But if we would only get the media. Now, who do we have really attacking this? We have Fox News, Gun Owners of America, and we still don't have the mainstream newspapers or NBC. Even CBS, who broke this, has backed off and pulled back now. And they act like it's, kid gloves here for some reason. So if the national media really went after this, this would have already destroyed the presidency of Barack Obama, because all of this was an attempt to promote backdoor gun control in America and destroy the Second Amendment. That's all what this was about. It was a political ploy by the White House, by this Justice Department.
We've had the ATF in Austin send illegals into gun shows. 90+% are dealers, but private people. If I want to go sell one of my guns, I can walk in with it and sell it. They want to shut that down, so you can't give your grandson a gun, or you can't buy your dad a gun. I bought my dad a gun before. He's bought me a gun before, many guns when I was young.
Right.
And so they can actually register and track everything.
Right.
And we've caught them all over the country. They send illegals in to buy it from some grandpa. Then they arrest the grandpa in the parking lot and shut the gun show down.
Mayor Bloomberg sent his own officers from New York City to a gun show in Phoenix to do the same thing. And he did that to Bob Templeton of the Crossroads of the West gun shows.
So it's not the feds out of their jurisdiction now. It's Mr. Gun Ban Bloomberg.
Right, exactly. A Republican. Yeah. And it's getting so crazy out there. People think we make this stuff up, Alex. Truth is stranger than fiction. And, folks, every bit of this is documented. And I think I really believe that this is going to destroy the Obama administration.
Well, you said you talked to Pratt, and it's been confirmed it goes right up to Obama, who is a state senator, called for, I've read the quotes, complete abolition of the Second Amendment.
Oh, of course. That's been their goal. They've just had to, they know that there isn't congressional support for it. They know that there isn't American support for gun control. So they had to fabricate another way to do it, just like he fabricated the healthcare crisis to bring in his Obamacare. That is how this man moves. He is a subterfuge specialist, and he is the one that has made this an agenda to make sure that they created enough ire and enough public outcry for gun control.
But I do find it encouraging that the ATF people actually started blowing the whistle.
Of course, there are good people. This proves there are good people in government. And if there weren't, I'd be out of a job tomorrow. I wouldn't have a goal and a purpose in what I'm doing.
I'd love to be out of this job.
Me too. Let's work ourselves out of a job. We'd live in a free country. That's exactly what I'm after. I've told my wife and kids that I'd love.
Well, people ask me, why do you get so upset? Why do you work so hard? At an instinctive level, I get chills talking about it. Being a slave, having my guns taken, having a government that can raise taxes to destroy my future, to have these corrupt interests selling our jobs out. I mean, you'd be crazy to not constantly work against this.
Exactly.
I mean, people think we're like heroes because we fight tyranny. You're not going to have freedom if you don't fight tyranny. It's an eternal battle. I mean,